We gathered quickly with the rest of the U.S. Army and grouped together in front of a line of military jeeps and trucks. The air was thick with anticipation, the sense of tension and adrenaline palpable. It was the calm before the storm, the last moment of preparation before we launched our final assault on the main base. As we stood in the line, my eyes met Ghost Meowscles. I could see the excitement and determination in his eyes, mirrored in my own. In that moment, all I wanted was a few seconds of connection, a fleeting moment of comfort. We embraced, our bodies entwining for a brief moment. My arms wrapped around his broad shoulders, his arms encircling my waist. Our lips met in a brief, fierce kiss. It was a victory kiss, a moment of celebration in the midst of war. As we broke apart, I could feel my heart still racing. The familiar scent of gunpowder and sweat hovered in the air, reminding us of the situation we were still in. But for that moment, I felt invincible. I looked around at the line of soldiers, their faces determined and their gazes fixed ahead. We were about to embark on a dangerous mission, but with our combined strength and determination, I knew we would succeed. As the truck rumbled along, I took advantage of the time to check my supplies. I had already used a fair bit of my ammo during the last battle, and I didn't want to be caught short. I took out a few spare magazines, checking their weight and content in my hands. The familiar feel of the bullets was a comfort, a small but important reassurance that I was equipped for whatever lay ahead. As I finished checking my supplies, I settled down in the truck seat next to Ghost Meowscles. We were both still running high off the adrenaline from the last battle, but the steady rhythm of the ride provided a moment of calm. We chatted idly for a moment, our voices punctuated by the hum of the truck's engine. I couldn't help but reach out to him, my arm snaking around his waist. He pulled me closer, and we held each other in a warm, comfortable embrace. I couldn't help but smile as Ghost Meowscles spoke, his words warm and encouraging. I relished the compliment, feeling a wave of pride wash over me. I laughed at his words about my angry looks. "So you found it sexy when I was giving death glares to the Russian soldiers, huh?" I teased, shooting him a suggestive look. His wink in response to my question sent a jolt of electricity through me, and I found myself blushing despite my best efforts. I knew he was teasing, but his words still sent a thrill through me, my heart thumping against my chest. I swatted his arm gently, still smiling. "You're terrible, you know that?" I said, feigning annoyance. His words sent a wave of warmth through me, my eyes softening at his genuine compliment. I squeezed his hand in mine, feeling gratitude swell within me. "I'm glad I'm here with you too," I said, my voice tinged with emotion. "It feels like we're a team, you know. I know I'm not a trained soldier like you are, but being by your side in this fight, it feels right. It feels like this is where I'm supposed to be." The hours passed slowly, the steady hum of the truck's engine a constant backdrop as we rode closer and closer towards the main Russian military base. The soldiers around us were quiet, their faces set in hard, determined lines. I could feel the tension in the air, the collective anticipation of the battle to come. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the trucks rumbled to a stop, the silence broken only by the sound of the engines as they died down. We all filed out of the trucks, quickly taking cover behind what we could find. I crouched behind a large boulder, my gun clutched tight in my hands. My heart rate was elevated again, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as we readied ourselves for the upcoming battle. My mind was focused and sharp, my senses tuned into every sound and movement around us. As I hunkered down behind the boulder, I quickly checked my gun, ensuring that it was ready for the upcoming fight. The familiar actions helped steady my nerves, my hands moving with a practiced ease. The weight of the AK-47 in my hands was familiar and comforting, a reminder of the training I had received. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I couldn't see the base yet, but I could sense its presence in the distance, a huge, dark shape looming against the pale sky. The sound of the rocket being fired echoed through the silence, followed by a loud explosion as it struck the base's wall. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, knocking me slightly off balance. When the dust cleared, I could see a large hole in the wall of the base, the rough edges glowing orange from the aftermath of the explosion. The blaring of the alarm shattered the temporary silence, signaling the start of the chaos. Russian soldiers began to pour out of the base, their weapons clutched in their hands as they began to fire. I ducked down further behind the rocks, my eyes scanning the scene before me. The sound of gunfire was deafening, the bright flashes of light from the bullets making it difficult to see clearly. I gritted my teeth, my fingers tightening around my own weapon. I leaned out from behind the boulder, gun at the ready. The sight of the Russian soldiers rushing towards us was intimidating, but I forced myself to stay focused. I aimed carefully and fired, the recoil from the AK-47 jolting my shoulder. Beside me, Ghost Meowscles was firing from a nearby ditch, his gun barking out loud reports. I could see the intense focus on his face, his eyes scanning the field for targets. The sudden sound of shots coming from the west caught my attention, causing me to pause in my own firing. I looked towards the west, confused. Who was firing from that direction? We were supposed to be the only ones here. A wave of relief washed over me as I saw the huge group of U.S. Army soldiers heading towards us, my friends amongst them. Bonfi in particular caught my eye, her fierce springtrap appearance looking fierce and ready for battle. Fredina, Chiku, Fexa, and Golden Fredina were also there, their usually colorful forms now colored military green, ready to fight. I lifted a hand, waving back to them in greeting. It was reassuring to see them there, their familiar faces giving me a boost of confidence. I knew that with them by our side, our chances of successfully taking down Bartkov and his base were greatly increased. As soon as the U.S. Army soldiers joined the fray, the tide of the battle shifted. The two groups quickly established a rhythm, firing at the Russian soldiers and taking them out one by one. The air was filled with a combination of gunfire and explosions, the sounds of war mixing together in a chaotic cacophony. Once the majority of the Russian soldiers were taken out, we all rushed forward, entering the base. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of gunpowder, but I barely noticed it in my single-minded focus on the upcoming fight. We moved quickly through the base, the sound of our footsteps echoing through the darkened hallways. We moved through the base, taking out any guards we encountered. The sight of my friends fighting alongside me and Ghost Meowscles was a sight to behold, their military-trained bodies moving with an almost superhuman speed and accuracy. Each guard that fell only served to make me more determined to push forward. At one point, we reached a large chamber filled with several Russian soldiers. They trained their guns on us, their eyes narrow and determined. I could feel the tension in the air, the stillness before the inevitable clash. Before the Russian soldiers could even raise their guns, our group was already upon them. The element of surprise was completely on our side, and the Russian soldiers stood no chance. Their bodies fell to the ground in quick succession, their guns lying discarded beside them. We kicked open the door to Bartkov's office, the sound of splintering wood and the grinding of metal echoing loudly in the room. The office was large and opulent, with plush carpets and a huge oak desk in the center. Behind the desk sat Bartkov, looking up with startled eyes as we barged in. "Bartkov," I shouted, my voice sharp and cold. "You're a lot shorter than I thought you'd be." The sight of him in front of me sent a wave of anger through me. This man was responsible for so much death and destruction, and he was just sitting there behind a desk like a king in his throne room. I advanced on him, Ghost Meowscles at my side, my gun aimed directly at him. The look on his face was a mixture of fear and anger, but I didn't care. He was responsible for too much pain and suffering to deserve any mercy. "You think you can just threaten the United States like that?" I snarled, my gun raised. "You think you can just kill and destroy innocent people without any consequences? You're a coward hiding behind a desk and sending your soldiers to do your dirty work for you." Rage flooded through me as I spoke, my voice rising in volume. In that moment, all I wanted was to make this man pay for everything he had done. Bartkov laughed coldly, his eyes glittering with cruel mockery. "Do you really think you have a chance against me, girl?" he sneered. It was infuriating to hear him laugh in the face of my anger, and I felt my grip tighten on my gun. "Shut up," I shouted, my anger overflowing. Without a moment of hesitation, I stepped up and slapped him hard across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the room, followed by a moment of stunned silence. I could see the surprise and outrage in Barkov's eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to take his taunting quietly. Barkov stumbled back, clutching his face where I had slapped him. I could see the anger and disbelief in his eyes, but for once he was silent. I relished the moment, feeling a sense of satisfaction at the sight of him laid low. "You're going straight to hell, and you deserve every second of it." I spat defiantly at Barkov as I switched my gun for my pistol. Without a moment of hesitation, Ghost Meowscles and I fired our pistols simultaneously, the shots ringing out loud and clear in the office. Barkov's eyes widened in surprise, and then he fell backwards, lifeless. As soon as Barkov fell, I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief and triumph wash over me. I turned to Ghost Meowscles, and we shared a moment of victory, high-fiving and hugging each other tightly. We did it. We actually did it. We both took a moment to catch our breaths, the adrenaline still coursing through our veins. Then, after glancing around the office one more time to make sure Barkov was truly dead, we made our way out of the room and headed back downstairs. When we emerged from the building, we were met by a sea of cheers and applause. The other U.S. Army soldiers and my friends were all gathered outside, their faces lit up with relief and relief of victory. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment at their reaction. We had done it. We had taken down Barkov and his base. I looked around at all the cheering soldiers, my eyes landing on Fredina, Bonfi, Chiku, Fexa, and Golden Fredina, and felt a wave of gratitude towards them. They had fought alongside us, and their help had been invaluable in our victory. I quickly made my way over to them, smiling as they all surrounded me and Ghost Meowscles, congratulating us on our victory. "Thank you, guys," I said, feeling a little emotional. "We couldn't have done it without your help." Fredina, Bonfi, Chiku, Fexa, and Golden Fredina all smiled at me, their uniforms still slightly disheveled from the battle. Fredina spoke up, putting an arm around my shoulders. "Hey, we had to make sure you two weren't having all the fun." Once the celebration had died down, we all began to load up the trucks, ready to head back to base. The mood was considerably lighter now, the sense of victory still in the air as we packed up our gear. I made my way over to Ghost Meowscles, who was standing a little ways off, watching everyone load up the trucks. I wrapped my arms around his waist, leaning my head against his shoulder. I sat down on the seat in the truck, Ghost Meowscles taking a spot beside me. The ride back was much more relaxed, the adrenaline of the battle wearing off and leaving us all feeling tired but satisfied. I leaned my head against Ghost Meowscles' shoulder, feeling his warmth and strength next to me. It was peaceful, sitting here in the truck, surrounded by our friends and the other soldiers. As we rode in the truck, I found myself leaning in towards Ghost Meowscles. The exhaustion and the afterglow of victory had made me more affectionate, and I couldn't help but feel a strong pull towards him. I tilted my head up towards him, and without a word, he leaned down and kissed me gently, our lips meeting in a tender moment. The ride back to the military jets was relatively short. The trucks rumbled through the terrain, passing through familiar but now peaceful countryside. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. I could see the military base in the distance, the jets standing ready on the tarmac. The ride back to the military jets was relatively short. The trucks rumbled through the terrain, passing through familiar but now peaceful countryside. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the landscape. I could see the military base in the distance, the jets standing ready on the tarmac. As soon as the trucks rumbled to a stop, we all got out, everyone stretching stiff muscles and looking around appreciatively at the base. "We made it," I said, glancing over at Ghost Meowscles. "We're headed home." We made our way over to the waiting plane, the familiar sight of the military jet bringing a mix of relief and anticipation. The other soldiers chatted amongst themselves as we climbed aboard, their voices a low hum in the background. As we settled into our seats, I felt a sense of exhaustion wash over me. Despite the victory, the toll of the fight, and the emotional roller coaster of the mission was finally catching up to me. The jet engines roared to life, and the plane began to taxi down the runway, picking up speed. Soon we were up in the air, the ground falling away below us as we headed towards our destination, home. I leaned back in my seat, feeling the tiredness in every muscle of my body. Ghost Meowscles, sensing my exhaustion, put his arm around me, pulling me closer to him. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breaths. The drone of the jet engines and the steady hum of conversation began to lull me into a drowsy state, and before long I found myself drifting off into a semi-sleep. I was woken up by the jolt of the plane touching the tarmac. Blinking blearily, I sat up and looked out the window, seeing the familiar sight of a U.S. military base outside. It felt almost surreal to be back home, after the whirlwind of the previous few days. As we all disembarked from the plane, the U.S. General approached us, a look of satisfaction on his face. "Well done on your mission, both of you," he said, addressing me and Ghost Meowscles. "You took down Bartkov and his base more quickly than we had hoped." I felt a surge of pride at the General's words. We had done something meaningful here, ridding the world of a dangerous threat and bringing a measure of peace to Uzbekistan. "Thank you, sir," I responded. "It was a tough fight, but we did it." The U.S. General smiled at us as he pinned a medal to both our uniforms. It was the highest honor he could give us, and I felt a strong sense of pride at the sight of the heavy medal against my chest. "You've both earned this," he said, his voice full of respect. "Both of you are true heroes." We headed home after that, both of us feeling the exhaustion and the sense of accomplishment mixed together. On the ride home, I leaned against Ghost Meowscles, my head leaning against his broad shoulder. The events of the mission replayed in my mind, a mix of adrenaline and relief and triumph all rolled into one. But now I was back home, safe and sound with Ghost Meowscles, and that was all that mattered. The moment we stepped through the front door, we were greeted by the sight of our son and daughter waiting there, their faces lit up with excitement. They both began to clap and cheer, their little voices yelling out their congratulations. "You're back!" our son yelled, rushing towards us. "We missed you," our daughter added. Our son and daughter were bouncing with excitement, their small bodies full of energy. As we both laughed and thanked them for their congratulations, our son piped up again. "You won the war, right?" "You're heroes," I exchanged a smile with Ghost Meowscles. Heroes. That's what we were, in our children's eyes at least. "That's right, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "We helped win the war. We're heroes," our son beamed with pride, his eyes wide. Beside him, our daughter was bouncing on her toes, clearly wanting recognition too. Our daughter, Marlena, rushed forward and hugged us both, her tiny arms wrapped around our waists, squeezing tightly. There was a huge smile on her face as she looked up at us. I wrapped my arm around her, drawing her closer to us. I could feel Ghost Meowscles doing the same, our little family unit complete once again. Our son Meowscles spoke up then, his voice proud. "We cooked dinner all by ourselves." Our daughter Marlena nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, we wanted to surprise you." I couldn't help but chuckle, the sight of our children's innocent faces and their attempts at cooking sounding like a recipe for disaster. I walked into the kitchen and couldn't help but burst out laughing at what I saw. There were 4 plates on the table, each with a helping of steak, rice, and salad. And at the center of the table, a slice of vanilla cake with 2 lopsided candles on it. The attempt was so innocent and earnest that I found it adorable. These kids were going to be the death of me, in the best possible way. I smiled as I looked at the plates. While the food looked a little unique, the fact that they had tried so hard to cook for us was touching. Ghost Meowscles stood beside me, a look of pride on his face as he surveyed their creation. "They did a good job," I said quietly to him, my voice full of pride and affection. Ghost Meowscles nodded in agreement, his expression mirroring my own feelings. He looked at the plates, his lips curving into a smile. "They did great," he said, his voice filled with love and pride. "We have amazing kids." We both pulled our kids into hugs, expressing our thanks and love for them. It was a moment of pure family bonding, made even sweeter by the fact that we had just returned home after an intense mission. We sat down at the table, the 4 of us together once more. The food looked a little funny, but we knew the effort they had put into cooking us dinner made it taste even better than anything we had had before. Ghost Meowscles and I both gave our thumbs up to our kids, appreciating their efforts even more now that we could actually taste the food. "This is really good, you two," I said, my voice sincere. "You did a great job." Our kids beamed with pride at our compliment, clearly happy that we were enjoying their cooking. After our slightly unusual dinner, we all settled down on the couch to watch a movie together. The four of us, snug under a single blanket, cuddled up together as the opening credits of our chosen film began to play. As the story unfolded on the screen, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Being home, with my family safe and sound, was the best reward I could ask for after the mission.